This is the Borne Report, B-O-R-N-E. There's no U but the USA, and there's no I in team. I'm Jason Bennett, and for Jason Ray Borne. And I am here to introduce you to the Bennett Campaign for Change in California and the Bennett Campaign for Peace in the Middle East. We get started with our Veterans Union, the International Brotherhood of American War Veterans. In the studio, I have my good buddy Ethan, our producer, and good old Heggie. Miss you, Heggie. This man had a liver that could literally turn rubbing alcohol into aqua fucking fina in less than half an hour. This man was unfucking, and I'm talking about a liter of it. This man was unfucking believable. Arguably one of the greatest alcoholics and officers from the state of Minnesota, maybe the world. We miss you, Heggie, at Guantanamo, and goddamn, buddy, look at you go. Never in my wildest fucking dreams did I think that this guy, God wills it, God wills my liver to continue drinking shots. Yeah, everybody. Heggie Hegseth, how the fuck he became Secretary of Defense, but I'm telling you, he's doing a great job. God damn, he's doing a great job. He is literally probably the perfect peacetime sec def because he's about getting the fitness up, getting the PTSD down. He's not clowning around. He answers all the questions correctly. I mean, the man, they make fun of him because he was on TV, but the man knows how to conduct himself, and he's literally so on the wagon, and I know this for a fact, that I know he's dying inside just a little bit working for the Donald, but and being that married. But we wish you great luck, Heggie, and we do miss you on the weekends. Anyway, back to the creation of a veterans union, the International Brotherhood of American War Veterans. Now, this is a for-profit union incorporated in California. My brother incorporated it to myself, Rob Wiggle, and John Anthony Cena, which is John Cena from the WWE. They played a Marine in that movie. So he's a smidge autistic, and he literally thought that John Cena was a Marine. I had to explain to him that he was not. But, he recovered quickly. He was just like, well, I mean, a lot of vets, I mean, they even have vet wrestling league. It's like a lot of vets, they could get into sports entertainment, and I know John would help them out. John reaches out to a lot of vets. I mean, why shouldn't he be? I mean, he's a great civilian that loves vets, and I agree. Obviously, Colonel Riggle, we would be, since I'm running for governor of California, we would be nominating Riggle to be acting president if I am elected. Right now, he would be vice president. He'd be my XO. And my brother would sit in the founder seat as a non-vote. But, I mean, some days, when he's well-medicated, I mean, he's Elon Musk smart. He has a really hard time communicating it, but goddamn, he's got a big heart. And this was my father's dream. He used his money to make sure it came true. Again, my brother is something else. I actually have a biological twin. He's in Israel right now, getting it in. He's sort of like Forrest Gump, Marine Corps Forrest Gump, and he's pulling his shift, I guess, from his perspective. And I just hope he checks in as soon as possible. So this International Brotherhood of American War Veterans would essentially set up an apparatus for Marines, combat Marines specifically, and combat MOSs who have such a hard time readjusting to non-combat operations. I mean, you go from making 130 to 400 grand a year as a contractor. Some of these jobs are very dangerous. Some of the hazard pay is very good, to making $18 an hour as a bouncer. You lose your house, your wife divorces you, you start abusing your painkillers. Next thing you know, you're taking fentanyl and you die. suicide rates, if you count overdoses, have tripled since the end of the war. These are numbers that have not been confirmed by the VA, but they are accurate, I can assure you. At any rate, they admit that 17 of us are blowing our fucking brains out today and don't seem to have an answer. We believe we do have that answer, and we do hope that Colonel Riggle will accept the post. I will volunteer. Currently, I'm not making a salary, and no one is, but I would volunteer my salary to get him on board, and a signing bonus of approximately $60,000 to Colonel Riggle if he would take the post and try to get us the Borne Report, BURNE. There's no U but the USA, and there's no I in team. If we could pitch that to Comedy Central, along with Don't Be a Leper with Jordan Klepper, How Not to Be a Political Pariah in 2025, we could have a power hour and a half, and 2 days a week we could have the Borne Report, Mondays and Thursdays. Literally why it's called Thursday. It's Thor's Day. I don't know, it's just important to me. It doesn't really matter. And then the other 5 days would be the Riggle Report. But he's still got that contract with Fox. I mean, if we could go before or after Gutfeld, that would be just, a blessing from God. We would fit in we take Newsmax. We take OAN. We take anybody kind of fit in that space. Be a bit part on John Oliver's show. The Borne Report could be a California correspondent for the John Oliver show. Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, or a bit part with great comedian like Bill Maher. The Borne Report. He's very opening and welcome to Republicans, and how he had real time. He could maybe in overtime. God, if I could just get this to Brother William, Rabbi William. He's my rabbi of comedy. I actually like him better than Leibowitz, and I do love John Leibowitz. Jon Stewart he's done a lot for Jews as far as acceptance, and I just wish he had a tougher stance on the existence of Israel and its right to defend itself. And I'll leave it there because I do need his help. He did get the 9/11 firefighters and police officers their money, and if he could help us get a 0% loan, not a grant, but a loan, I think we could help a lot of vets here. And as I said, I think Colonel Riggle would be much better at helping vets, especially during a time of non-combat operations or non-war, because we would be bidding on the 38th parallel contract and the Gaza contract, as well as the border enforcement contract that the Brits currently have with the French. They have hired the French to keep French French illegal immigrants out of England. Like the French are really going to do that. They're paying them over 200 million pounds a year. I was like, I will do it for 70% of that contract. Give it to our vets, and it can save a lot of lives. Right now, we also have the Justice Courts Incorporated. Now, this would be a job, though, that would employ vets. We would take. This is also part of the Bennett campaign for change in Southern California and Greater California. We are running for governor, and I would certainly appreciate your support, either through attempting to get the Republican nomination or the Freedom Coalition of Independent Reformers, and we'll get to that in a minute. This actually has several directors. If they chose to be a part of it, we would just offer stock to them for free for their expertise. Mark Cuban, obviously, we tried to get on Shark Tank. I didn't make it this last season. This is Mark's last season, so it was devastating. Mark is Texas. Mark was the owner of the Mavericks. Mark was buy.com. We had a great idea, buynato.com, and we would just use Mark's knowledge of buy.com and Amazon and Walmart's fear of being boxed in and maybe hit with an antitrust. If we could work our way into that market, I doubt we would be as big as, Bed Bath & Beyond or Target, even after several years. But BuyNato.com could assist us in our trade war with China and growing closer to our NATO allies. We would be offering Mark Cuban a 30% stake in the justice courts, as well as several other companies, just for his expertise, on the understanding that he would allow myself and Marines to purchase that stock back at a 30% profit to him within 7 years. And a guy like that, we would also have him as acting treasurer, despite the fact that he's not a Marine. He's one hell of a taxpayer, and he's one hell of a human being. We would have him as treasurer of Simplified Capital, the capital only for you, if Jared Kushner did not take the job. And he might not be able to. That might be a conflict. But he would be our second choice for treasurer. Simplified Capital would obviously be managing the fiduciary accounts for many Marines and our service members. And we want to ensure that we have knowledgeable investors, making sure that their money is invested properly. And I don't know two other people that are alive today, that are more qualified. I mean, Lehman Brothers is gone. I trusted them more than anybody when they were around. My dad did too, but Mark Cuban knows what he's doing. And we could actually start an investment fund or an investment bank to go along with Simplified Capital, Cuban Brothers, right? I believe not only does Jared still have, we call him Kuslash. Kuslash. Jared Kushner's a great guy. Lifelong Democrat, but I forgive him for that because he's seen the light and he's with the Donald. Ivanka's got him on track. And he's got a fantastic real estate investment platform / business. And so we would definitely you always want to be in land. You always want to be in real estate. You can't lose with real estate, especially American real estate. And, we would definitely want Jared Kushner to at least be vice treasurer, if not treasurer. And Mark Cuban would get shares just to, keep us unbiased, I guess. There are Democrats and Republicans that are vets. And the justice courts would essentially assist us in removing people that want to leave prison on an enhanced parole into sort of de facto FEMA camps. But that's much better than a jail cell. Sort of help them reintegrate into society. It'd be like a trailer park with FEMA trailers guarded by Marines. It would give them a job, and we would be building nuclear power plants. We want to get, now obviously not the reactors, the military-industrial complex, losing a lot of money because of the end of the war. And so we're hoping to get HALCO, the only name you need to know, military-industrial complexes. The road contracts and the digging the trenches for the power lines contracts and, making the electrical buildings contracts and side buildings and, the guard towers, paving the parking lot, stuff like that. We could do that with inmates making 18 to 22 bucks an hour. We could obviously pay the vets a good bit more. And that would be, that would be employment for everybody. You could have, nonviolent offenders, paying restitution, getting up on their child support. I mean, we got shoplifting now. Because of these flash mobs is a felony in California. It's not always enforced. It's not always prosecuted, but shoplifting, could be, and I saw this on Fox News, if I'm mistaken, or this has been repealed, I apologize. I certainly don't want to look foolish, but in several states, because of these flash mobs, shoplifting has become rather serious. And now you've turned a stupid kid really into a lifelong felon, and no one will give them a job. And so their recidivism is guaranteed. This Justice Courts Incorporated would be sort of like a Judge Judy. It's like a private court that would assist inmates and the justice involved in paying restitution and staying in conditions far better than the jail cell, and allowing them to work their way out of jail on 2-for-1s, maybe even 3-for-1s, depending on what the state or the prosecutor was willing to do. People get locked up over child support, but, if you're sitting in a jail cell, you're not paying child support either. And it's costing the California taxpayer $120,000 a year. Imagine somebody rapes your child, or somebody does a horrible thing to you, and then your entire family doesn't pay enough taxes a year to, pay for their cable television and their free tablet, computer, and the video games they sit on their ass and play all day. Meanwhile, you're working your ass off trying to pay these California taxes. We just want to help you do that. Justice Courts Incorporated is also a California company. We believe in issuing cow stamps, stamps for champs, and Amer stamps. We're trying to market that to the Donald. Essentially, food stamps would become, and EBT, the free money that some welfare checks, I guess, would be issued in, as well as maybe even Social Security, if it was issued in a greater amount, would be issued in cow stamps and Amer stamps, the stamps for champs. And that would prevent, maybe not Social Security, any type of state benefit, we believe, should be restricted to purchasing American products. So it's like, if we're going to give money away for free, at least we could force that person to pay an American mortgage, pay for an American car, pay for American food. Not to be rude, keep Americans employed and put America first. Help the Donald stabilize this great economy, and what would be considered an American company. I guess 70% of the employees are American, and 70% of the stock is owned by Americans, because everything's a multinational corporation now. But I don't think that's an unreasonable a platform to have, and it's part of my California campaign for change. I definitely want to see more money staying here in California. We would also impose a very stiff tariff of 1,300% on any money being sent south of the Rio Grande, and to assist money that is made in California staying in at least the American economy. We have people that literally come up here and support a family in Mexico by taking an American job. And the fact of the matter is, many times they're taking MIC jobs, or they're taking very, very good jobs away from American citizens. And we have veteran homeless, and we have veteran jobless, and we need to be looking after our union, this is not the Soviet Union. If you don't have a union card, i.e., you don't have one of these. This is a Social Security card. I'm going to show you the number. But if you don't have one of these, you don't have a union card, you can't work in this union. And between passing that legislation and a child minimum wage of $12.16, as well as tariffs, state tariffs, which would be something probably challenged in court, and I don't really give a shit. I think we'll win. An economy as big as California's third largest economy in the world, if it was its own nation, it's still bigger than India. We should be able to tariff places that offer sweatshoppy wages, even other states. Now, they'll argue that that's unconstitutional, but I would argue when the Constitution was written, only land taxes from males were collected, because, there was no income tax, there was no minimum wage. I would argue that also there was colonists, each state had, its own currency, and so that's why they had the gold and silver clause to the Constitution, and we've clearly gone to Federal Reserve note, so I would argue that entire clause is very open to interpretation for 2025, and we will be challenging that in court. The American Foreign Legion Incorporated, another California corporation, based off of the model of the French Foreign Legion. The American Foreign Legion would employ veterans of combat and or 5 years of service, along with illegal immigrants and legal immigrants that wish to come here, pay an immigration tax, and or serve their country to prove their loyalty the American Foreign Legion would allow that with 5 years of service to, you can immigrate yourself. For 10 years of service, you can get a child. So if you and your wife, were to enlist in the American Foreign Legion, which, would probably stabilize an immigrant family, they could support 2 children. And obviously she could have a pogue job, personnel other than grunt. Or, she could be an airborne commandita, just like we would have airborne commandos. We would augment our services with services they do not have. We would base off, our American Foreign Legion would be primarily based off the way the Brits run British Royal Commandos, and the way the French run the French Foreign Legion, except we would never lose, period. We would not tolerate retreat, and we would not tolerate losing. So, but this would be, an individual that had been paying taxes, and the Donald cleared, and Homeland Security cleared, and, was proud to be an American, and just couldn't wait to continue that and do it in a legal way. And so, the French have the French Foreign Legion. If you do 5 years, you're French. And so you would do 5 years in the American Foreign Legion, and you're American, and nobody can do a goddamn thing about it. And that's just one way to, legalize some of the quote-unquote good immigrants and maybe, heal this country. There's such a divide between Democrat and Republican, and there's just not that big of a divide between the people. I'm a California Republican. I'd be a Democrat practically anywhere else. I'm a pro-abortion, pro-stem cell research, pro-union Republican. I mean, that's a Kennedy Democrat, like a John F. Kennedy Democrat. That's a patriotic, veterans first, veterans preference, and, America first Republican. But there's no reason for, us not to promote interracial marriage as a positive in schools instead of this critical race theory bullshit. Interracial marriage, if you give God 2 sets of Legos, 2 boxes of Legos, he can build a better person. And an interracial child, we could just teach genetically, is likely to come from 2 vastly different gene pools, which would allow the dominant genes to express themselves, just like weed. Just like you take a really good sativa and you take a really good indica, and then next thing you know, you got 40% THC, and you can stay awake or sleep, and you get all the great benefits most of the time. North of 70% of the time, an interracial marriage will end in a genetically superior and individual, whether it be a plant or a person. I don't know about their character or anything else, but at least they would also be learning from 2 different cultures, 2 different ways of life. I would argue north of 70% of the time would probably be a rather tolerant individual comparatively. It's kind of hard to be a neo-Nazi or a colonizer-hating piece of shit if you have both genes inside of you, and both of your parents don't give a damn about skin color. They care about this country, and they love each other and they love you. That if we could promote that as a net positive and get rid of this critical race theory shit, maybe we could just breed the hate out and promote literally, and I think I could prove it from a scientific standpoint, that interracial marriage not only socially would assist this country. I mean, you could teach in schools. It's a social positive, and it's probably a genetic positive, north of 70% of the time. I mean, you see it in racehorses, you see it in, mixing 2 types of dogs, you bulldogs and, a bigger dog winds up with a pit bull, Pit bull beat the fuck out of it, either one of its parents. Pit bull is something that we created. That's a devil dog. A lot of breeds of racehorses are mixed between, 2 different types of racehorses, and that's what makes them so fast. They've got both types of blood in them, and I think, mixed blood is stronger. And I certainly think that it would make this union stronger if we could create an American race and maybe eventually a human race, and promote interracial marriages as a net positive to our society and schools. from a very early age. I'm talking kindergarten, instead of these critical race theory classes where, one kid's an oppressor and one kid is a victim. You would have a situation where you would teach that interracial marriage would heal society to certain degrees, and you are not the sum of your parts. You are the sum of your conduct, and you're the sum of your character as well. All men aren't created equal. Okay, I couldn't walk on the basketball court with LeBron James, and so I usually date someone outside of my race because I want my kid to be able to dunk a fucking basketball one day. I want my kid to not be 5'5". I want my kid to learn Jewish culture and heritage and learn to respect his country and her country. I hope to have a girl if I had one. Girls are easy. Everything's a mom question. Boys, they live to destroy you. They live to be you. It's like they sit in your chair and they just can't wait to overthrow the king. Meanwhile, little girl easy, until she starts to look like her mother, and you can't keep clothes on her. Right? And she's wearing those apple bottom jeans and, all that bullshit. But up to that point, everything's a mom question, It's like, that sounds like a mom question to me. You do what? Just ground them until they graduate med school and do your best. I don't know. I don't have kids, and thank God. But we now have the Freedom Coalition of Independent Reformers. This is essentially something I stole, an idea I stole from William Maher, or Bill Maher, as he is known on television, his show Real Time, as well as a very accomplished stand-up comedian and artist in his own right. Essentially, you would have the Democrats for Reasonable Reform, and you would have the National Capitalist and the International Brotherhood of American War Veterans Party. Essentially, the National Capitalist is our attempt to get the National Socialists and or the fascists, the Nazi element out of the Republican Party. So national capitalism would promote capitalism as being a superior way to create wealth. And now with the rise of AI, we need to be teaching investment at a very early age. Our platform would include home economics, the economics of owning a home, managing a portfolio, and living a blessed life, or living a good life. You don't have to say blessed, but essentially you would teach children to manage money at a very early age. And we would have a child tax moving forward, not including pre-existing conditions. Obviously, you can't take a child tax credit away from an already struggling mother, but you would encourage people to stop having so many goddamn kids because we cannot employ them. AI is going to take everybody's job. That's why homelessness is through the roof. That's why joblessness is through the roof. That's why everybody's claiming disability now. And you've got so many people on the government that the government is collapsing. Donald's doing his damnedest, but it seems cruel as fast as he's trying to move and dig us out of debt. And so this would help ease that and bring more people into the conversation. I would be the number 2 seed. Elon Musk would probably be the number 1 seed. And then on the Democrats' side, we would ask Will Maher to run the Man of the Year play and run for president along with Stephen Colbert as the 1 and 2 seeds. And, I'm sure that Mark Cuban wants to run for president. He said so. And, after that, we just get grassroots, people that didn't fit in either party. They're Green Party, they're Libertarian, whatever, into the mix. And hopefully they would bank at Simplified Capital for you, right? And that would help stabilize the bank. If they could put those, since it is my company, to be in the Freedom Coalition of Independent Reformers, once we have Simplified Capital established, it will be the official bank of the Freedom Coalition of Independent Reformers. Well, we're back with the Borne Report, and our final book. One hell of a read, quite frankly. for a guy who no longer has a father or either of his grandfathers alive. BB's one hell of a role model. The Duke of the Jews, as we call him, because we won't tolerate a king. Remember that one time? And so, anyway, BB is arguably maybe one of the greatest men to live since Moses. And so he certainly has done more for our people and to ensure the resurrection of the Jewish people and their continued survival and security. The Jewish state would not exist without Bibi Netanyahu in any form. We would have been wiped off the fucking earth without a leader like this. God sent him. And if you're looking for just a role model as a man, not even as a religious leader or as a political leader, just a role model as a man, this man is a patriot. He is a just decent human being. And courage doesn't even begin to describe him. Pick it up. BB, his autobiography, My Story by Bibi Netanyahu. Of course, it's a New York Times bestseller. And, well, he's as good a writer as he is a politician. And that is saying something. She's one hell of a read. She's a long read, but she's a page turner. And, you know, the man's lived a long, full life, and certainly a lot of life lessons in here, a lot of great history. If you want to know the history of the Jewish state and the history of what it took to create it and keep it, pick this book up. And it's arguably one of the only books you'll ever need. It's like the Dead Sea Scrolls of the modern Israeli state. Quite frankly, it's from beginning to end, it pretty much explains it in totality in a way that even an amateur reader can stay interested in, and certainly a Jew will find inspiring. The courage this man has shown his entire life. I haven't a father anymore to learn from. He passed, and so, you know, I look to BB for leadership on days when, you know, I can't give him a call. One day, hopefully, I'll be able to pick up the phone and ask Bibi Netanyahu, hey, man, Rabbi, what do I do here? You know, when I'm governor, I'm going to call the governor, I'm going to call BB, I'm going to call the Donald, I'm going to call Kushlash because he's a fucking brilliant, lucky son of a bitch, quite frankly, but he's a brilliant guy. And Hagee, obviously, my guy, on days I don't know where to turn, and I want to make the right decision for the people. I'm Jason Borne, and Twin It, and one message that my father left me is, you know, don't ever risk the platoon when there's time to make a decision. When you don't have to make a quick decision, make the right decision. And oftentimes there's already somebody who's already made that decision in the past. Lean on leaders and lean on people that just are experts in their field that are smarter than you. Don't have a God complex. God is complex, and so is life. And, you know, he speaks to everybody, and, you know, it's good to have confidence, son, but it's never good to be so confident you think you know it all. And certainly I learned from this book, and I learned from BB every day how to be a great politician and just an example, quite frankly. He's a great man. And thank God for Bibi Netanyahu. We would not exist as a people. We would not exist as a state. And we are in the state of confusion if we would have been better off with any other leader. I am an American. I'm a Marine, and I'm always going to be an American first. I do consider myself, while not Semitic enough to return without my late wife, Jew for life. And I certainly enjoyed this book, and I learned a great deal on how to be not a better Jew, but a better person and a better politician. Pick it up today, New York Times bestseller, and you know, it's a good time. It might be one of your best times. If you're a Jew, definitely. As far as reading a book like this, you know, this thick, It's certainly a page turner. It's certainly a good book. And, I lay it next to my headstand where most people keep their good book. This is sort of my Bible. This is my politician's Bible. How to be a great man, great leader, and a great politician. BB My Story. Pick it up today. That's all for the Borne Report, and thank you so much for listening. Please click to subscribe, and please, if you can, if you know any of these people, help me get this Veterans Union off the ground. To create the website, we would need the government support. I don't want to take people's personal information, especially, if you have a secret clearance or more than that. God forbid some Islamic terrorist track you down and, hurt you or your family because my dumbass website got hacked into. So before we start taking DD-214s and can begin the union in earnest, I would literally need Pete Hegseth to create the website and authorize it so that we could become essentially part of the military-industrial complex ourselves, and certainly help reduce veteran suicides and homelessness and divorce rates and underemployment even, So Pete, call me, and even if you don't remember me, I remember you. You were always a friend of the enlisted man. You were one hell of a junior officer out there at Guantanamo Bay, and I thank you so much for your service. You're a hell of a guy, and you still have such great hair, you fucking lucky prick. But I'm just peanut butter and jelly, buddy. You're sitting up there, living my life, doing my job. Lucky bastard. We all wanted that job, and you got it. Working for the Donald must be sweet. So give me a call, buddy. Edo's Executioner. Can't wait to get back to work. And once again, this is a Borne Report. BORNE, because there's no U but the USA, and there's no I in team. Thanks again.